Good afternoon and welcome to the Hoosier Huddle podcast. I'm Sammy Jacobs. Along with me is T.J. Inman, and we're here for a little football recruiting update. IU had a nice little run there last week, high school recruits committing, and the class is now starting to come together. You know, Samuel Simpson was the first verbal commit way back on February 1st. And then in the last week, you had Henry Ollinger committed in April 21st. Rodney White, defensive tackle out of Towson, Maryland, committed a few days after. And then both on last Friday, Jacob Savage, linebacker out of Union, Kentucky, and Casimir Hicks, who I think is a big important piece, not only for the team but how they're seen in state. Committed that Friday as well. So we've talked about Simpson a little bit, but let's get to these four new guys and start with Henry Ollinger out of Columbus, Ohio. Obviously, we all know Ohio State's down there in Columbus, Ohio. He's ranked 30th in the state. He's the 31st ranked running back out of Columbus, 6'1", 210 pounds. Really loved IU. There were a lot of guys in on him as well. Boston College, and Iowa, Rutgers, Miami, and then Ohio State was interested. Ohio State, Penn State, Notre Dame, Wisconsin never really offered, but he did make some visits to those schools as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, TJ, what do you like about Henry Ollinger?
Yeah, it seemed like Michigan State was right there with Henry as well, but listed as running back, IU's going to play him at linebacker. I think that there's an athleticism level that they really liked, moves very well side to side, produced at a very high level in a talent-rich area. He played for a smaller school in Ohio and dominated at that level. And that's what you're looking for, right? You're looking for guys at smaller schools. It can be difficult to judge how that will translate to a higher competition level. But if they don't dominate at the lower level, that would be a red flag regardless of what their physical measurables are, right? But Ollinger dominated at the lower level. So it's not like it was a tiny school, but kind of a mid-level Ohio school. I think that he projects as a player that physically looks like he'd be ready pretty quickly to play. But with linebacker, I think you'd prefer to have him come in, be able to take a redshirt season, and then be ready to go as a redshirt freshman. But it was a really good get because, like you said, SEC schools, it seemed like it was going to come down to Indiana and Michigan State, as well as Missouri had pursued him pretty heavily, and Indiana got that done. I know that he was – we'll talk about the other guy at linebacker in a second, but those were the top two linebacker targets for the IU coaching staff. You know, with the draft just happening, you talk about a draft board, right? It's not necessarily a draft. You have to recruit these guys. You have to choose who you want, and then you have to convince them to come play for you. These were the top two guys on IU's board at linebacker.
Yeah, and that's always good to get. You know, everybody gets tied up in star rankings and all those things. But if a coach comes in and says, "Hey, we want
right.
These are the guys we want. They fit in our system, and you know probably fit the NIL budget," is now a thing. So it's good to see IU. Let's talk about the other linebacker, Jacob Savage. He's one of the top players in Kentucky. 3-star guy, was down to IU and Michigan State late, went to IU. When we first talked to him, he was thinking about committing in the summer, but he felt so good about IU and that official visit, majoring in business, that he felt like Bloomington was home and decided to pull the trigger. He's a guy, again, a two-way player, probably the best player at that smaller school in Kentucky, is if you watch his commitment video live, his coach is talking about we're going to win state titles. We're going to get payback on these teams, and seems like that's a good fit for IU. A school that really hasn't done much wants a guy who's going to be hungry to do something, and that's what he has at a Riley High School down in Union, Kentucky.
Yep, and again, Michigan State was right there. That's become kind of a common theme early in this recruiting cycle, is IU going toe-to-toe with Michigan State for a number of players, and so far, Indiana beating them out. It's going to be an interesting comparison because those were the two hires, Jonathan Smith and Kurt Signetti, former Big Ten East foes that are kind of seen as Michigan State being at a higher level as a program based on recent and historical levels. But Indiana, that's one of those matchup opponents that we talk about that you want to beat them, always beat them. And if you can beat them, you'll be elevating your program a little bit. Savage, incredibly productive. I mean, you look at his numbers from last season, 141 tackles, 17 of them for a loss. And then on offense, almost 1,500 yards with 26 touchdowns. I mean, where do you find fault there? He's got really good tape, and from a purely optics standpoint and headline standpoint, as kind of sports writers, Savage is a great name for a linebacker.
All linebacker name.
Yeah. So
definitely
from that standpoint, even if he can't play a lick, you can say Savage at linebacker. That sounds good. Lucky for IU, it looks like he can play. I think it's interesting, and Casimir Hicks is the third one. Guys that were uber productive on both sides of the ball that Indiana is putting on defense. Just kind of a interesting little wrinkle to the first part of this recruiting class. Defense has gotten the head start on the offense in terms of commitments. But all three of the guys that they brought in were very productive on the offensive side of the ball. Savage definitely looks more like a linebacker than he does a next level offensive player. But I think Olinger, you could make a realistic and logical argument. Hey, he could play running back for us. Casimir Hicks, we could just have the ball in his hands and he can make things happen for us. But they're choosing at first to put all three of these guys on defense. And that's just an interesting storyline to watch early as this recruiting class starts to form.
Yeah. And, we've seen in the past where IU will, recruit somebody who could play both sides of the ball and sticks them on offense like Stevie Scott.
Yeah.
But yeah, you saw Lou Moore came to IU as a wide receiver and safety too, and now he's back on the defensive side of the ball. But if there are any banged up running backs, you have two guys who have experience carrying the ball and have been productive to, maybe they get that goal line handoff if your first five guys go down with an injury.
Right.
But yeah, let's talk about Casimir Hicks. You mentioned him. I think this is an important get at a Decatur Central in Indy. He's a consensus top 3 player in the state. And anytime we talk to our readers or followers on the forums and on social media, it's, how's recruiting in Indiana? How is Indiana recruiting the state? Casimir Hicks is that guy that you really want to have, commit to your program. Rivals has, let's see it in the state. Rivals has, is it Jaquardin, Guilford from Fort Wayne Northrop, undecided. Jeremy Finch, who's, an IU legacy from Warren Central, undecided. But you look after Casimir Hicks, number 4, Tyshawn Bardo, Wisconsin. Trevor Gibbs, who's, been on IU's campus and stuff like that, undecided.
Yeah.
Terry Walker, Lawrence Central, Duke, Carson Elm, like the top 10 guys in the state. You want like you got to keep them from going to Toledo, Wisconsin, Duke, Wisconsin. Like if they go to Purdue and Notre Dame, okay. I mean, I get it. You're in the state, but you can't lose these in-state kids that are good to schools that you're going to compete against. And Duke, Wisconsin, maybe not Toledo, but like a guy like Kobe Cherry, brother plays at IU. He should be a guy who should be a shoe-in as long as IU wants him, which they do.
Yeah.
As long as IU wants him, you should get whoever in the state. Now, if Notre Dame beats you out for that, okay.
Ohio State, we've seen that recently. Another school that you throw in there is a competitor that has kind of dipped their toe into the water in the state is Missouri. Missouri has been a finalist for several of these guys recently. So they're making a concerted effort to recruit this state as well. And Casimir Hicks, fantastic athlete. Decatur Central, number one, it's a good program. They just won the state title. I believe it's Class 5A that they won the state title. For those not familiar, Indiana football, 6 classes, with 6A being the highest, Decatur Central's in 5A, and just finished 11-2 and did win that state title last year. Hicks played all 3 phases for them. Cornerback, wide receiver / running back, and then kick returner, and incredibly productive in all 3. He's not the ideal size for a corner. I think that's fair to say. Ideally, you would look at a guy that would be a couple inches taller, but other than that, he has everything you're looking for in a corner. Moves well, very good athletically. To sound like a draft scout, he turns his hips well. I'm no expert on defensive back, highlights or defensive back film, but you want a guy that has speed to keep up with outside receivers, quickness to keep up with these shifty slot receivers, and then the ability to be physical both at the line of scrimmage and in coverage. If you're going to defend Big Ten receivers, you have to be physical. And Casimir Hicks has shown all of those assets. Really, really good get. And I think for IU, you're right. Optically, it has been much easier for Indiana to recruit guys from the state of Florida, from the state of Virginia recently with the Cignetti coaching staff and their connections there. In the state of Maryland, like that area, the state of Georgia, recruit guys that got overlooked by the SEC schools, or maybe only had like an offer to a lower SEC school, and viewed Indiana as a good out-of-state option to get away from home a little bit, experience something different, and also get playing time at a Big Ten school. And that was kind of where Indiana was finding guys in Florida. It was much easier for them to get those players because they didn't have a stigma associated with IU football like the in-state guys do.
Right. So, like, you talk about high school guys. I'm going to make us feel really old, TJ. Like, high school guys, they were born in what, 2008? Something like that. If you're going into –
Yeah,
2000 now. Yeah, 2009, if you're going to be a senior.
Right.
You think about IU football after 2009, there's some dry years, but, by the time that they're 6 years old, IU's gone to, 4 or 5 bowl games, and the college football playoff went 11-2 and all that stuff. So that stigma that, families have in Indiana, it's only Indiana football and they stink and all that stuff because it's generational in the state. You don't get that from the Florida guys or from guys outside of Indiana. So I think the tide is starting to turn. a little bit with these this younger generation who has seen a successful IU football program, probably the most successful stretch of years, and it's definitely been more successful than the basketball program,
Yeah.
probably since these kids have been born. But that stigma is starting to change, and now you turned in an 11-2 season where you were probably the hottest ticket in town, in the state for a while. People wanted to go down and see Michigan. People wanted to go to College Game Day. People wanted to go see the Nebraska game, where IU was not supposed to score a touchdown on the best rush defense in the universe. So, yeah, it's optically, and I think that's he's a good player, but I think for optics, it's fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
It is just fantastic to get a guy like that in the state, and maybe people around Indianapolis, like Jeremy Finch, who's at Warren Central in the city, come back down to IU and things like that. Real quick on the last high school commitment, Rodney White. I really like his tape too. He's got a high motor. He gets into the backfield. He disrupts offenses. He's 6'3", 290 out of Concordia Prep in Towson, Maryland. He's just looks like one of these guys that this staff can mold into a very productive interior defensive lineman.
Yeah, we'll plug the work you did with the little interview with White. What did he have to say about kind of his commitment, why he chose Indiana? He's a guy that was coveted by a lot of high major schools.
Yeah, he definitely was on a lot of lists for some high major schools. Said Indiana felt like home. He liked what they did. He had a really good time with Pat Kuntz and Buda Williams and those guys. So he's a guy who's bought into this staff like a lot of people. And again, every time I talk to these recruits, there's I always ask how did last year change your perception of IU? It says that it proves that Coach Signetti could come into a Big Ten school and win right away, and that's what he did, and that's what a lot of these guys are saying and they're believing in to get with these high school players. Now we'll get to these transfers. I did pick up 2 transfers in the transfer portal and are on the hunt for more. But talking to them too, it's we've seen what they did at Indiana. We've seen, you look at Roman Hemby coming over from Maryland, and what caught his eye when we talked to him during spring ball was, man, I was on the other sideline and you could just feel the tide changing for Indiana football. So let's talk about Stephen Daly first. And I think the real easy comparison is CJ West, since they're both from Kent State, but he's not really like CJ West. He doesn't play the same position. He's a little smaller, but he could be just as productive. It's another all MAC guy who's coming out to Indiana with something to prove. Signetti and his staff recruited him while he's at JMU. He lives an hour away from JMU, so he's super familiar again with the staff. He saw what they did with CJ and was like, sign me up. CJ ended up being a 4th-round draft pick. Probably should have gotten taken higher, but he's heading to a good organization out there in San Francisco. And then the run they made to the college football playoff is, he's won everywhere he's been. You just have to Google it or look it up in most of our articles. And then, he has a high motor. He wants to give 100% all the time, no matter, what the score is. He's fast. He's physical. He has good hands, likes to use his speed around the edge, has some power as well. And you just think getting into a Power 5 or Power 4 now, weight program, nutrition program, and training, he could just get better than that. And that's what IU needed in the portal, was on edge. Anything to add on Daly, TJ?
Well, I think you look at his background. He was initially a tight end when he was initially recruited out of high school. He was a tight end. And he's gotten bigger each year. Now he's up to 260. I think it's possible that you see him maybe slim down a little bit and play it like a 6'1". Maybe it's like a 240 or 245, 250, and be a true edge rusher for Indiana. I think that is sort of the idea what you're looking at. But he was good against the run for Kent State, had 51 tackles on the season, I believe, 50 plus. So good player. He can be disruptive on the edge, I think, for Indiana. Adds depth at minimum. And I think gives you a guy that you think has another level to go up. And you mentioned this staff was familiar with him. That's important for them in the transfer portal, is familiarity with guys so that they feel comfortable bringing them into the culture, particularly in the spring when he's coming in. He's not going to have a spring football with this team. He's going to have a fall camp and one season. That's all he's going to have.
Yep.
So it's really, really important that you feel comfortable bringing that short-term option into your program, not just getting desperate to fill a need. And they were very comfortable with him from their previous relationship that they kept with him.
Yep, and then you bring in Kellen Wyatt as well. We've said
Right.
that edge rusher was a priority in the portal. It still kind of is, along with slot receiver, which they're looking for. Kellen Wyatt comes over from Maryland, had 7.5 tackles for a loss, which led the Terrapins last year. 30 tackles, 6'2", 252. But he was listed as a linebacker in Maryland, played linebacker in Maryland, and will move up and be an edge rusher at IU.
I think
it's
this
another
one, it makes perfect sense in terms of the Indiana coaching staff has multiple years of tape of him in the Big Ten, evaluating what were his strengths, what did he do best. And the answer was get into the opposing backfield and make plays. That was what he did best. So they're going to put him in position to do that and that only as an edge rusher. I think it's possible he's even just a situational edge rusher for you. He's certainly not going to be an every down guy for Indiana's defense. So you get a player from a Big Ten opponent and put them into a position that we're accentuating their strengths. We are putting them in a spot where we know they've succeeded before and just going to ask them to do that. That makes really good sense. And you say, well, what would be a successful season for a guy like that who's just coming in for 1 year? If he does, 7.5 tackles for a loss for Maryland, and he had 3 sacks. If he gives you that as a late portal addition and another body to throw at opposing offensive lines and wear them down, that's a success. That's a great use of the spring portal.
Yep. So that wraps up the spring portal for IU right now, what they have. TJ, what are they looking for? You have Muhammad Toure's on campus this week, I believe. He's a linebacker at Rutgers. He probably can play him all over the field. Does have some health issues.
Right.
But when
2
he's
ACLs.
healthy,
yes. Not that he has 2 ACLs, but he's had injuries twice to his ACL.
Yes. You're supposed to have 2 ACLs.
Right.
So,
he's an interesting guy. It's another one with Big Ten experience, right? That you don't have to wonder, well, how would he compete in the Big Ten? I mean, you know exactly what he would do. It might be slightly different given the role that you would put him in. I think that you would see if Indiana got him, the plan would likely be linebacker depth, and the ability to put him, much like Wyatt, to move him up to the line of scrimmage as a pass rusher. That would likely be the role that you would envision for him. I don't know how comfortable Indiana would be with the previous injury history, but Indiana has the scholarships available. If Toure was comfortable with the role that IU had for him, and IU was comfortable with him filling that role, and they weren't desperate, for him to have to be relied upon every week, it would make a lot of sense. It would not be a case of, yeah, he's got injury history, and if he gets hurt again, we're screwed. It would be a case of he does have injury history, but we trust that he's healthy or is going to be for the start of the season. We'll take our chances, and if we get really good play out of him, we're even better on defense. And if we don't, we've got other options we feel good about. That would be kind of what you're looking at. The other thing that I think we assume Indiana is going to be looking for a slot receiver. The injury of Tyler Morris continues to be something that they're looking at solutions for. Is that solution LeBron Bond playing more than they thought that he would? Is that solution E.J. Williams playing some slot receiver to use his size as a mismatch against slot corners? Is it Omar Cooper? We know he has the quickness to do it. Is it him moving into the slot in situations and giving more time on the outside to E.J. Williams, Charlie Becker, Davion Chandler, if he's ready? Or is it, hey, we feel good about this guy in the portal to come in and fill this specific role at slot receiver? That appears to be the biggest question mark remaining on offense. And really the only thing that I would think is a big, not even really a huge need, but more of we'd feel more comfortable with another guy, I think, would be probably the best way to phrase it from our perspective. I don't know about from the coaching staff, but from our perspective, we'd be more comfortable with another guy you could trust out there.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. I mean, LeBron Bond looked good in the spring game. He's super fast. He's also a true freshman. Yeah. So having an experienced guy coming in from the portal to kind of show him the ropes, even if he ends up being a backup, a depth piece or a backup punt returner, which is what you also lost in Tyler Morris, is the punt returner. And IU has been very good on punt returns last year and won a couple games. So it's we'll see where the portal goes. It's an interesting time. But I do want to tell our listeners we are running a new promo on Rivals. You get buy 1 month, get 3 months free. So that takes you up basically up right into the season. So the promo code is B1G3F. You just go to indiana.rivals.com/signup and put in B1G3F. You get basically 4 months for the price of one, which is great because you're coming up into our football preseason content, most of which will be premium content. We'll have the countdown to kickoff starting in about 4 weeks. Yeah. And all our season previews that we usually have had on Hoosier Huddle. So thanks for listening. Subscribe, subscribe on YouTube. Find us on X at Hoosier_Huddle and sign up for a membership at HoosierHuddle.com. We've enjoyed our switch over to Rivals so far. So thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in. And we'll be back with maybe some basketball updates, TJ, later down the road, our first basketball podcast.
Yeah, I don't know. Has anything happened on that front? I think it's been quite a month, so there would be a lot to discuss there for sure. We just appreciate everybody on Rivals, the boards that have been there. Reception's been very nice, and we hope people are enjoying that coverage. We're just getting started.
Yep, just getting started. So, again, it's B1G3F is the code. Head over to HoosierHuddle.com, get your 4 months for the price of one of premium content.